you. So before you guys will have to listen to me for a little bit, and I like to keep this as short because we're in front of a break and we want to all network and socialize. And we have been listening to very interesting stories. I truly believe that. But, so I wanted to show you a little video so that you can watch TV for a minute or two. Not stare at me, please. Stare at the TV, and then we'll go a little bit into the use cases that we see with our insurance customers. Right? So do I press buttons? Is that what I do? Yep. The middle one? No, the left one? Press again. Here we go. No, keep pressing. Back. You gave me the wrong advice here. The big green one.
Right now, pause. Just, I think it's gonna work.
Nothing else.
When is a car not just a car? When it's a connected, data-driven ecosystem. Dozens of sensors and edge devices gathering up data from just about anything. Road infrastructure, other vehicles, and even pedestrians. To create safer vehicles, smarter logistics, and more actionable insights. All the data from the connected car supports an entire ecosystem, from manufacturers building safer vehicles and fleet managers tracking assets to insurers monitoring driving behaviors to make roads safer. Now, you can control the data journey from edge to AI with Cloudera. In the connected car, data is captured, consolidated, and enriched with Cloudera Data Flow. Cloudera's data engineering, operational database, and data warehouse provide the foundation to develop service center applications, sales reports, and engineering dashboards. With Data Science Workbench, data scientists can continuously train AI models and use data flow to push the models back to the edge to enhance the car's performance. As the industry's first enterprise data cloud, Cloudera supports on-premises, public, and multi-cloud deployments, delivering multi-function analytics on data anywhere with common security, governance, and metadata management powered by Cloudera SDX, an open platform built on open source, working with open compute architectures and open data stores, all the way from edge to AI, powering the connected car. The future has arrived.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, there are two reasons that I just keep clicking again. No. Yes. No. I can talk forever without slides, by the way. There are two reasons that we wanted to show you this to you. One is we are going to talk about some insurance use cases around telematics and cars, and AI and machine learning in it. The second one is, since this covered all of this is what Cloudera is and does, I don't need to do that spiel, and that always feels a little bit salesy in these kind of environments. So I prefer to have the video do that. So we are the hybrid data cloud company. We do a lot of work in insurance. I manage our insurance business globally, primarily large insurers that we do. If you look at our distribution, probably about 40% is health insurance and health related, and then about 30% P&C, about 30% life and annuities, and then some brokers, some of the larger brokers. We spoke to some of them this morning, and some TPAs, benefits administrators. So that's it. We truly believe, and people make jokes about this, and this is not a car reference, by the way, this Uber thing, but we truly believe that insurance is a data industry, and it's, as I always try to explain to my colleagues in other lines of businesses, insurance only lives by external data, right? Data that is coming into our industry from other industries, especially commercial, but also personal. So we analyze, we operationalize data that is actually sourced and created in another place that we bring into our organizations, and then we analyze it and do risk assessments on it and do our magic on it. So I have a lot of use cases here. I'm not going through it, with all sorts of industries and their use cases that we use the output of within insurance. So my storyline tends to be insurance is sort of an Uber data industry, right? Or Uber data, depending on where you are in the world. We do utilize all the data generated and used by other industries, which is a good thing. So that means that I'm very supportive of my colleagues that do use cases in their industries, Joe here in financial services, Anthony in telco, et cetera, because I grab whatever they do and insurance-size it, and we can learn from it in the insurance space. We have a lot of impact areas for advanced analytics and AI, and these are sort of the areas, I'm not going through them too much, but these are the areas that we see a lot of traction in our customer base right now. Our customer base, I just mentioned how it breaks out. We have about between 130 and 200 insurance customers. It depends on if you count the L1 logo level or if you go to the subsidiaries. Again, they lean towards the larger companies. And these are the use cases that we tend to see a lot. Most recently, I have seen a lot of work doing on risk assessment, risk profiling, underwriting modeling as a result of new realities because of the pandemic. Seen a lot of work going on in network analysis and graph kind of efforts around fraud, especially in healthcare related efforts, as well as in supply chain. And we have seen the good old customer 360, which either keeps going or pops up every couple of years again, where a lot of work has been done recently. So this is a fraud example of how our customers tend to look at it. We always start on the reporting, BI type of structured data, structured reporting, do the same thing every week, every day, every month kind of things. You'll see that on the left lower side of the left. That tends to be done on data warehousing capabilities classically. Then we move into descriptive analytics. Then you get the type of questions like, if we run the same report every week or every month and we keep seeing the same thing, does that have any descriptive value? How does this look like? How does this specific fraud scheme look like, et cetera? Then we move into explorative data science, and that's where a lot of our customers are in right now in that phase. That's somewhere in between descriptive and predictive. Like now that we understand what's happening right now, what can we learn from it? And that's where we see some serious applied machine learning and AI popping in. So, and that's sort of the beginning of that process is where we find a lot of our, what I would call classical established insurance companies, the larger ones that have been around for a long time. On the right side, the other thing that we always do with them is help figure out for these use cases what data you really need. And often the first question that I get is, Monique, what data should I acquire, third-party data, to do this use case? And I'm like, well, let's take a step back and see what we really need to do to get value out of this use case. And often a lot of the data is already in-house. It might not be clean, it might not be structured, it might not be in the way how you want it, but it's there somewhere. Also, especially with the large customers, quite often they already have acquired a lot of data already that we can use for specific use cases. So we outline the type of data required, as you can see on the right side of this slide. It tends to start with structured and in-house, and it moves over to unstructured, quite often streaming, third-party data, and that's almost a natural evolution there. Now, production of AI doesn't just happen, and I talk a lot to the business or the line of business type of folks in the insurance companies together with the data and IT folks from the customers. And there are obviously the whole project plans, and some people have walked through them this morning in very much detail and lots of structure. But we have to figure out what we want to do and how to do it before we get to insights. The phase where we are right now in the majority, I would almost say, of our customers is that they're really good with that whole process of how to do those projects and what is needed and how to structure it internally and the governance and even the technology to a high degree. Where we are still struggling and where we are working on very hard now, I believe, as an industry, is how to operationalize on the insights. We got a lot of insights now out of exercises and projects, and then it's like, okay, so what? Now, if we know that certain underwriting criteria need changing, I'll give you an example. I'm originally from the Netherlands, and we learned with an insurance customer there that houses in Amsterdam flooded regularly after rain. It just walked pretty much straight from the street into the basements, etc. And they learned also that if they could increase the little elevations that you have in front of your front door, there's probably an English word for it, with 1.5 inches, they would cut back that flooding with 60 to 80%. That's a great thing to know, but now you need to do something about it. If we're not acting on that knowledge, then really it has no business value, right? So, and the operationalization of the learnings that we get out of our insights is an area where we still need to do an awful lot of work as an industry. And I think the people that spoke to us this morning have great examples of how that could happen and how the industry is looking at those. See, I clicked the button, but I didn't do it right. Here we go. So I wanted to walk you through a couple of use cases to help a little bit better understand. Allstate is one. The use cases that I'm showing by name are customers that have given us permission to do so, of course. Allstate was running an awful lot of analytics. It's a large organization, right, with lots of business units, lots of different entities. And they did it on all 50 states in the United States at once. They pulled in traffic, they pulled in weather, they pulled in all sorts of other stuff for their personal lines books, car and home. And they really had a hard time getting enough learnings cross states because they almost had structured it in silos by state. So what we did with them is we pulled all the data together in a Cloudera data platform, and we created a comprehensive view of their data. And it enabled them to get more accurate and detailed predictive models, specifically as a next best offer, churn. It were those type of marketing and sales kind of scenarios for their customers based on the specific risk profiles and behavior profiles of those customers. Again, what took probably, after all the hard work of the technical data work and the lift was done, what was the hardest thing in this project too was get it operationalized in their operational system so that they could actually do something with all the beautiful insights that we can gather out of, modeling and AI and machine learning. This is a really interesting one. Discovery in general is a multi-line insurer in South Africa, the second largest insurer in South Africa. And when they started getting hit with COVID, South Africa obviously is a bit of a complicated market. There's a lot of poverty and hard to access people in the country. There are also very wealthy enclaves. What Discovery figured out was that they had a hard time doing a risk assessment of their population, and they didn't know where and how to help people best protecting themselves against COVID infections. And they didn't have enough vaccines. This was the beginning of the pandemic. So what we did with them, we used models to segment their insured base on the health side for all sorts of different criteria that honestly would be very hard to continue to use for other purposes, because we literally used all the criteria that I believe somebody asked, the gentleman at Progressive, on what are elements that you want to stay away from, like the gender, the race, the age, the weight, the height, all that kind of stuff. We used all of that and subsegmented their population into specific risk categories based on what we knew at that time, what the medical society knew at that time on COVID. And based on your risk profile that we evaluated that way, they created different plans of actions to help their subsegments protect against COVID as much as possible. And I'll give you an example. If you were over a certain age and you were overweight and you had diabetes, they would send you one of those oxypulse things for on your finger. They didn't have enough for everybody, so they did it on risk classification. And they said, every day do us a favor, check that finger thing. Either call in if they were not very automated people or societies, or you would get an app or a portal, you can upload the information. If your results were starting to become disturbing or not optimal, Discovery send a medical resource to your home to help figure out, what your risks were if you needed to be hospitalized, etc. They think that based on the results of other health insurers in South Africa, their mortality rate was reduced by 60% because of these types of interventions, preventative interventions that they did. So I think that's a really cool example, because we did operationalize on it and it shows impact, right? You see why you do what you do. Now we go back to the cars. Much more time. Cars. So again, I'm sticking to Discovery here because I was closely involved with that account for a while. Discovery as together with Progressive here and a couple of other companies around the world, was on the forefront of telematics. And they're now getting to the point, again, this is in South Africa and some other African countries, they're getting to the point that they have done pay as you drive, pay how you drive, pay where you drive, all the earlier like pay kind of scenarios. So now they thought, what would be really cool if we could help people even further and become like a full service organization in their travel journeys. So what they did is to ask people, do you give me permission to use your phone apps, for example, and figure out that you are a Starbucks customer, right? So they would like you to optimize your driving. So first of all, you get discounts for Starbucks. If your score goes up, they do the score that you're a good driver or a bad driver or whatever. But what they also do is after 2 hours, if you're in your car, you're driving in South Africa, and after 2 hours, the insurer believes you should take a break, they ping you and they say, look, you've been in the car for 2 hours. We think you should take a break by now. There is a Starbucks coming up about 2 miles from here on the right side of the road. I'm making that piece up, of course. If you take a break there, depending on what type of a customer are and how long you have been with them, and there's a bunch of marketing criteria, they either give you a discount on a Starbucks product, they have a deal with Starbucks, or they actually pay for it if they believe that that's what you need by then. So that's the next step, right, in these kind of value-add services around telematics and around driving. And the ultimate goal that companies such as this one want to go to, and we're not there yet, is that it becomes almost like a concierge service, that they're saying, Joe, I pick on you because I happen to know your first name. Joe is in the car, and Joe is delayed. He lives in the greater New York area. That can happen. Joe also has children, and the children need to be picked up from school every day at 4:30. Now, Joe is not going to make it because Joe is in the Lincoln Tunnel. So the car figures out that Joe is not going to be where he needs to be, and it's tied into his agenda on his phone. So the car pings Joe and says, dear Joe, looks like you're not going to make it, too bad. Would you like us to call the school and tell them you're 20 minutes late? So that's what they would like to get to. We're not totally there yet. From a data management and technical perspective, we actually could. There are a whole bunch of permissions that need to be given in that process, right? So what we're working through with a couple of customers right now is, okay, can we use the data this way? Is that legal? Is who needs to give permission? Is it Joe in my example? Is it Starbucks in the old example? Is it the school? I mean, what can we actually all do with this? So there are a bunch of those sort of regulatory and data utilization things that we're doing, but technically that's the outlier where some of the car insurers would like to get to. Let's see, I have another one. This is a good one on visualization. The other thing that we sometimes run into with AI and machine learning is that all the data scientist communities and some of the IT infrastructure and IT data folks get extremely enthusiastic. And the business people that ultimately have to use it, they get confused, right? They look at the models and the formulas, and I loved your presentation, lady from Swiss Re, but there are business people that look at it and they're like, I don't know what any of this stuff is about, right? So we're working hard on visualizing the outcome and showing it in visualizations and dashboard. This is one that we did with a partner a couple of years ago on natural catastrophe management. And it was to showcase what you can do and what you can model when you bring different data, in this case, open source data, open data, together. So what we did here, this is Houston, I believe, or somewhere in there. It's not Houston? It is? Okay, good. I got that one right. What we did here is we actually looked at what we had and what we could find on pictures, drones, winds, water, that kind of stuff before the event. In this case, Hurricane Harvey. That's picture 1, picture 2. Then picture 3, we showcased what data points we could collect during Hurricane Harvey. So this is wind, water, measurements, all the NOAA information, that kind of stuff, drones that people had that they posted on things, drones, those materials. And in 4, we per second, we outlined at certain measurement points, water levels and wind strength. And I believe this is either water or wind, this is water. I have another one, wind, but it didn't fit on the slide. Because in some insurance coverages, as you maybe know or maybe not know, it is covered if wind was first, if wind is the root cause. In other ones, it's only covered if water was first. So it's really important to know what was actually the core trigger of the event. Was it water or wind, right? And then in 5, we did pictures after the event, public pictures. And then we did in 6, we did sort of a cluster proximity kind of graphing, which led claims people to say, if your dot is very close to all those other dots, and those other dots look like 100% underwater or have no roofs anymore, we assume that you don't have a roof either, and we pay without an inspection, which in those days was really good because we were still sending people for inspections, and that's very expensive. And secondly, in that area immediately after the hurricane, it was hard to get people over there for inspection. So whatever you could pay and process without that human intervention was a good thing. So that's what we did there. And business people liked it because it has pictures and it's easy to understand, right? I like it too. So this is our data platform very quickly. We have many different types of data sources coming in, whatever you want to. Then we provide what's called data services. I always explain to people it's just a data journey from getting into the building, cleaning the data, storing it, organizing it, making it ready for analytics or operations. And we have it underpinned by what we call shared data services, which is lineage transparency, data governance, data security. We do hybrid. We do on-prem, multi-cloud, private cloud, public cloud, whatever. And our governance and security moves with the data, regardless of which platform you use. So if you set up rules one time for your on-prem environment, if you move it to Azure or to AWS or to both, it moves with it, so it stays the same if you want. It's very important for insurance companies, of course, because we have a lot of regulations to comply with. And then we hope to set that data up for use cases that we don't support ourselves. I mean, we're not an insurance solution company, we're a platform company. And they primarily at the moment are around customer experience, regulatory compliance, underwriting laws, pretty much the whole insurance change, right? And as I mentioned earlier, claims fraud. And that was it for me for now.